All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome on. We're here with another episode of Three Up, Three Down in our current series. Current series is all about reflecting back on the 2021 season. Had the opportunity to kind of do that internally with our own reflections in the first episode. The last few episodes, we've had the 2021 Little League Baseball umpires on from the World Series. Tonight, though, we turn it to softball. So we turn it to the dirt diamond, if you will, here, the big round yellow ball. And we're excited to talk about softball and their experiences here with the 2021 Little League softball umpire crew. So we've got several members of that crew on. I'll make sure that I introduce them here momentarily. But here, as we continue to go ahead and take a look at what exactly we can extract from 2021, really interested not only the viewpoints of all of us, but then especially those of us that were fortunate to work at the World Series level, and we get to hear that from the softball side of things here today. And we're excited about that. A couple things here for me announcement-wise before we go ahead and get started with things here today. As I mentioned, today is all about softball, but I do want to take a brief second kind of preview where we're headed here in the next 2 weeks, because as we start to round out October, our goal then is going to be to kind of take these lessons that we've talked about from these World Series umpires, both tonight and previously, and all of our reflections, try and put them into one place so that we can mindfully start to prepare and think about the 2022 season. So as we start to take a look at really the next 2 weeks in the season, and those are the last 2 weeks here in October before we break on the 31st for Halloween, next week and the week after, the 17th and the 24th here, which are coming up here for us, we'll take a look at number one, taking a look at our individual improvement plans. We'll take a look at that next week. And in the following week, we'll talk about building an umpire program, kind of some things to think about there as well. So that's kind of where we're headed. And again, trying to take and apply all the lessons that have been shared, all the golden nuggets, if you will, from the World Series umpires, and really then put them in place here with where exactly we're headed back into 2022. There are also a couple other things here that I want to go through before turning it over and focusing on the experience of our 2021 Little League softball umpires. And I'll go ahead and share my full screen here with us. And that is just to kind of make sure, as I mentioned here, we kind of know why we're here, what we're doing, and then ultimately where we're going here all at the same time. So you kind of think about here announcement-wise, as I mentioned, the Little League softball umpires will be on. Here's our scope primarily, number one, to kind of hear about the experience in year one in Greenville, which is really exciting to hear about. So we'll be interested to hear those perspectives, talk about some of the keys to success, just as we flushed out with the baseball umpires, some of those similar comments, and then ultimately try and promote and get to understand some of the softball side of things. And I know there's a lot of folks on this call that delve in both baseball and softball. Some of them are exclusive to softball. Some of us are exclusive to baseball. And I think there's a really good opportunity for all of us to kind of dive into softball here tonight and really kind of figure out what exactly is on that side of things as we continue to advise or even think about different avenues and opportunities for us as well. As I mentioned, the next 2 weeks we'll wrap up the season here on this this theme of lessons learned from 2021, specifically then taking a look at those lessons we'll learn tonight and the golden nuggets that we've heard beforehand to apply those then to help us plan both individually and collectively for 2022. 2 episodes here left in the month of October after this evening, one of which is the 17th, creating your own individual improvement plan. Talk about how to mindfully craft that next week, and then start to talk about how to take that whole idea of still making improvements, but specifically doing so to prepare us to lead in 2022. Now, when we talk about building a foundation to lead in 2022, that'll actually be a bridge to the next season, which will be November and December. And that'll be then taking a look at ways in which we structure our umpire programs, specifically as we build and construct different clinics and provide you with some ideas and things like that, as many of us are hosting clinics and thinking about designing clinics and changing things up with our umpire programs, either at the local or district level. So from a snapshot, that's what we've got here on tap for tonight, 10:10. And then you can see then the other episodes there here coming up to us at the end of the month, the 17th and the 24th. And then, as I mentioned, we'll break for Halloween on the 31st. So we'll be off on the 31st, come back in November, and then kind of talk about really turning the page to 2022 and preparing for success there in leading our local organizations. Seth is out on a volunteer appreciation dinner here in the Central Region tonight, so he's not with us. DJ is. DJ, did I miss anything announcement-wise or anything else that you can think of here before we go ahead and start to talk about the softball experience? Take that as we're good to go. All righty. Well, just to set the softball folks up here, I want to kind of recap a little bit from what we've talked about so far this season. First of all, in our first episode, we reflected on 2021. We did that in a collaborative mindset. We kind of had these questions to take a look at. What went well in 2021? What were we most proud of? We'll take a look back at that here today with the softball folks. What did we get better at? What made that difference? What made you struggle? Those were kind of the primary focal points of us to think about as we reflected back on 2021. And again, those will still be some things that we investigate here as we flush out the experience of the softball folks. And then as we mentioned here in the previous weeks, episodes 2 through 4, we've taken a look at the World Series umpires from the baseball side of things, took a look at a variety of different things, the benefits of the crew chief model, hopefully stimulated some thought for many of us there and using that potentially for tournaments and whatnot in the future. I think it broke a lot of ground and made a lot of headway on pre and post game conferences. That'll actually be something we circle back to as we talk about preparing to lead in 2022. And then some just really key points here that I think will continue to come out and be really points of highlight, points of focus, even for the softball crew too. And that's how many of us at that level succeed because we check our ego up at the door, gives us an open mind to prepare to lead in whatever the case may be. And then that whole idea of resiliency, allowing us then to, as we mentioned last week, trust our training, slow down the process, and be patient with ourselves and have that positive self-talk that we can do this. And those are kind of some of the major big picture takeaways here from 30,000 feet, if you will, over the last 4 episodes. Now tonight, as I mentioned, is all about the softball crew, and I'll go ahead and introduce those individuals here now. Excited to have them on here to share their experience about the Softball World Series here down in Greenville, North Carolina. I'll go ahead and introduce these individuals here as we go ahead and get set. Going to do some ground rules here as normal before I do that. If you guys do have any questions, just feel free to drop them in the chat. DJ and I will both kind of monitor that chat, screen it, and feed them. So if there's anything that you want to know or want us to ask, please make sure that you drop that in the chat. Let's go ahead and introduce the members of the 2021 softball crew here, and then I'll start to turn it over to them here. And joining us this evening, Mike Cameo from the East. So Mike Cameo from the East is with us. David Byers from the Southeast is also with us. Mark Teagle from the West. Brian Wolf from the Southeast. And then 2 Central Region fellas, Mitchell Lemponen from Ohio in the Central, and then Don Mason from the Central as well. So those are our representatives from the 2021 crew. Did I miss anybody there in the 2021 crew? I don't think so. Got anybody there? All right. Well, gentlemen, welcome aboard. I'm very excited to have you guys on and hear what you guys have to say. And I'm ready to shut up and listen to you guys talk about your experience here now that we've got everything set up. Kind of 3 different segments, I guess, that we'll have here tonight for our discussion. Segment 1 will definitely be about the experience, and that's obviously what we are probably most interested in. So we'll start there here in just a second. We'll move on then to kind of take a look more so at the softball-specific side of things, and very interested to hear what you and some other people may have to share about considering softball. And then lastly, just offering some closing words of wisdom. So those are the 3 segments here that we'll use to go ahead and frame. And guys, as we go through this stuff, feel free to jump on. You guys may end up talking like at the same time, just yield the floor, whatever it is, we'll be fine. So just hop on in, take whatever question you guys want to, share whatever comes to mind. I'm here to take notes, to listen, and then ultimately really learn from you guys about your experience and then how to apply it really to getting better and even considering the softball side of things here. So let's go ahead and jump right into it, to the first segment of the evening, just really about the experience in general. And I'll kind of start out with a big picture question. And obviously this was the first year for the Little League Softball World Series to be played in Greenville, North Carolina. Just a general question. How did it go? How was it? Just kind of share about some of the general thoughts and your initial reactions thinking about the 2021 Softball World Series. So guys, I'll turn it over to you.
I can start if you want me to. Just getting selected, obviously, by Marshall, Casey, and Tom Rawlings was a big deal to me. As it turns out, I'm the veteran guy from 2011, so 10 years since I did my last one. Greenville was wonderful. The inaugural series, obviously, the hospitality of the wonderful staff, the people in Greenville. They embraced us. Obviously, the complex was first class. I know they've had a big tournament there, the TOC, for a number of years, but they upgraded it for this tournament, as well as the locker rooms for the umpires were, home away from home. So, that was my first takeaway when I got there.
Yeah, I would agree. I definitely want to say something about the locker room they put together because that was new this year. And the lockers were wide enough to fit an entire equipment bag underneath the bench for each of us. So they were roomy and like Dave said, it really was a home away from home. It's where we spent most of the games that we weren't working or on water duty for the crew that was on there. And, you know, they had a TV in there. It was good. We were able to watch all the games as they were going on without being out in the heat of a summer North Carolina day.
Yeah, I agree with that. I wholeheartedly agree with what Dave and Mike have both said. And by the way, glad to see y'all again. I haven't seen you since. So
Absolutely.
good to see all of y'all that we haven't seen each other since then. But yeah, that the locker room was phenomenal. The folks, the volunteers, if I had to compare, not to compare Portland to Greenville, but the volunteers in Little League are always phenomenal. And that was truly the case again in Greenville, in all cases, top to bottom. So.
And I'll just compliment those of us on the crew who decided to wear the Adidas shirt. It looks like we phoned ahead like women on a date or something, but you know, it's just the way umpires are. I think that speaks of the camaraderie that we had, that we just stepped in, we hit the ground running as a crew. I had worked with Brian and Jane in 2018 in Portland, so we already had that strong relationship, but the friendship and the camaraderie with everybody else on the crew just stepped right up and hit the ground running. And I think a lot of that is from the tone that was set by Marshall Casey. I mean, he came in with his experience and his leadership and just set a tone of, this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And Chuck Latini was there from New Jersey, as well as his assistant. And then I can't stress enough having a washer and dryer in that locker room. And thanks to Mitch, a ironing board and iron that said property of Hampton Inn on it for some reason. But
they were returned at the end of the tournament.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
But a great group of people, men and our amazing woman who was on the crew too.
I would agree with a lot or everything that's been said up to this point. All of us except Mitch had a World Series under our belt. We had experienced Portland. We knew what Portland was like. You know, and Portland ran an excellent tournament. So coming into Greenville, just by looking at the pictures, you knew the facility was going to be great. But being the first year, you just kind of wondered how everything was going to be. And if you didn't know it was their first year, there's no way you would have known it was their first year. They just knocked it out of the park with everything they did, from volunteers. They've already talked about the locker room, which surpassed everyone's expectations, and it was exciting. Even the company that did the locker rooms, he came there the first day just to ask us what our thoughts were and how we liked them. But they were phenomenal. We could all be in there at one time if we needed to be. You know, so we just had a great time. Marshall did set the tone pre-tournament with his communications. Not only his communications, but when we had questions, he was right on it to get back to us and to try to really help us navigate through an unknown, which was the pandemic and how everything was going to play out. So like I said, all of us except Mitch, you know, had a tournament under our belt. And I think all of us were, we just bonded real well because we had done that. And it wasn't necessarily about who's getting what games or where they're going to be, but we were all there to support each other. We had a couple instances where an umpire or umpires, you know, just needed some moral support. They were going through some tough times, and you normally don't see that when you get a group of people together that haven't been together before. So that was, you know, hopefully we were all cheering for Mitch, and we had a lot of fun with him. But hopefully his experience was a great experience too.
Mitch, I'll turn it over to you here and kind of, I guess, put you on the spot a little bit since you were the only rookie, if you will, the first timer of the tournament. Because for those of you guys that don't know, Mitch, he was the only umpire of both World Series tournaments that decided not to defer his appointment to 2022. So, I mean, everybody has their own reasons why, but what I'd like to do is at least, Mitch, I think a lot of people oftentimes, and this is experienced from myself and I think a few other people also on the call who have been younger, and Mitch is a pretty young individual, early 20s as well, very talented umpire, very talented individual. It can be very intimidating. It's from somebody who was on the college diamond at a very young age and things like that, and the umpire brotherhood and sisterhood that it is, the fraternity and sorority that it can be pretty intimidating. So, Mitch, I think one of the questions that I want to start to like dive into and be a little bit more specific in what we went through as well is, you know, Don Mason mentioned a lot about the support. There was camaraderie that was mentioned by a few other folks as well, and I just want you, Mitch, to maybe talk about maybe some of the things that you appreciated as kind of the younger first timer coming into these things with this crew, and what kind of made that experience around them help you to succeed or have a positive experience. So kind of turn it over to you and just kind of share some of the things you appreciated, specifically those for a lot of us out there that are going to have to welcome some younger talent at some point or another.
Yeah, I mean, going in, I wasn't sure what to expect. You know, I've never done any World Series at any level. I've only done even one regional tournament going into that World Series. I really don't know all that many people outside of my area up here in Northeast Ohio, or as I like to call it, the iceberg. The once everybody got there, got into our meetings pre-tournament, started meeting everybody, just the camaraderie from everybody really helping me out as we were going along. And then just once we got out on the field, started doing games, a lot of the nerves started going away. I mean, in just working with everybody that's had that experience before, just really, I don't want to say as a crutch, but it was to kind of, it was very helpful to know, there's other guys that can really help if something goes sideways at any point. And like I said, and everything else that these guys have said right along, all the volunteers that were there, a lot of them behind the scenes are umpires in the regions and things like that have helped down those areas and things like that. So, I mean, it was just getting to know everybody really helped kind of calm things down as we were going along with the tournament.
Yeah, that's a good answer. And I'll turn it back to the crew here to also kind of talk about this because I do think it is a unique opportunity to welcome some younger folks in. And as we know, the officials are an aging population. That's one of the things that we're definitely, not necessarily struggling with, but we've definitely got to work through. And all of us then have that mindfully on there. And I know Mitch is a very talented umpire and somebody that's fun to be around here too. But if you guys could speak to maybe some of the things that Mitch did on his own as a first year and as a young person that made it really easy for you guys to kind of absorb and be be there for him as a support network too, because a lot of times it's not only just the people around you that's got to absorb you, but at the same time, if that person isn't willing to kind of do his or her part, that's another issue as well. So kind of speak, I guess, to some of the things that maybe somebody in that new shoe could do to make things even easier for the crew.
Well, I know from my perspective, and I was fortunate enough to have Mitch on the semifinal with when I was doing the plate. But one thing that stood out to me was that he did not come across as a first year World Series umpire or a rookie, as we like to refer to him. The whole tournament, he embraced any input that we had, but he was spot on with everything that he did and didn't come across, I don't think, to anybody that he was a younger or fairly new official. So, and he's not really new because he's been umpiring a long time. He just is new to the regional and the World Series experience. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with David. I worked with Mitch. The pool play, Mitch and I and a couple others were on the same quote unquote crew together as we started the tournament. And Mitch did a phenomenal job. I'm going to echo what David just said. Great to work with you, Mitch. You were spot on in what you did. We need younger folks to jump in and do just exactly what Mitch is doing. And I really enjoyed working with you. We were actually, I'll say we were locker mates. We were right next to each other. So really enjoyed working with him. And he brought a lot to the crew in terms of all the umpires, the umpire crew. Even though he was, I'm going to say, quote unquote rookie, but he helped us out a lot in a lot of different ways. So yeah, Mitch did a great job.
Yeah, I would say, Mitch was, stuck hanging out with a bunch of old guys for the week, but he was there, in the locker room watching, the games that were ongoing, cheering on fellow umpires, analyzing different aspects of a call, because obviously that's what we do when someone else's game is going on, and he was there, with all the rest of us, just being part of that crew. Which for me, that was almost a little bit unique from previous World Series because it was just umpires there. None of us had anybody with us. So we were hanging out with each other all the time. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
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 There were kind of a couple of levels of closeness. You had your crew that you were with during pool play. So you developed that closeness, but there wasn't a clique of any of those people. And when things got mixed up as we got into the semis and the finals, those crews just shifted and took on the new people when we went to 6-man for the last couple games. Everybody was just knew what to do. We'd been working on it. And off the field, as was mentioned, there wasn't anybody else around. And there wasn't a whole lot of programming because of COVID. They weren't taking us on outings. We got to go to one night of barbecue, but the rest of the time we were just like, hey, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And there was just some natural groupings of people that we go across the street to a restaurant. We did a big thing at a Mexican restaurant at the last night when everybody came and, everybody just was so comfortable with one another that it was just a great celebration of what we'd accomplished.
Yeah, that barbecue you talked about, it was something that the Visitors Bureau put on for us from the city of Greenville. And originally there was a schedule that all of us were going to be able to go, and then Mother Nature wreaked havoc with the game schedule. So there was a whole crew of 4 that never got to go to the barbecue, but we had everything set up for them in the hotel lobby when they came back from their last game. All the leftovers from that night's barbecue were out, just ready to go. And that was the kind of camaraderie that we had. And, it was, a priority to make sure that everybody got to participate in that in some way.
And I thank you for that because I was one of those. Yeah,
Yeah,
and the
same
barbecue was
here.
good, and thank you for doing it.
Well, cool. I appreciate you guys.
Specifically, Stu, with Mitch, he did a solid job out there. And as other guys said, outside of, just knowing he was young, you wouldn't have known that he was young. I mean, he did a solid job. I enjoyed watching him. He had at least 2, maybe 3 obstruction interference calls, and he was all over those. I mean, I'll be honest, I was a little jealous. He saw those calls and how he handled them. I mean, you go back and you saw a couple of them, I saw them, but you still go back and look at them when and it's like, wow, for an umpire like myself and maybe some other guys, you don't always catch those things or you're not looking for them. And for somebody with less experience to be able to grab those was very impressive because he was dead on them. And he identified them, he vocalized them, and at the right time, he applied the ruling to it and awarded or returned runners to bases. So being able to watch that out of any umpire was great, but to see somebody come in with, at Mitch's point in his umpiring career was really enjoyable and quite pleasing for me to watch and witness.
Stu, if I could add, not to
Yeah.
hijack, but based off of everything that everyone has said, and the camaraderie that we developed in a very short period of time, the fact that you were able to put together those 4-man clinics, the 3 up, 3 down clinics that you put on, I'm sure everybody would echo this and say that it was extremely helpful because basically we were starting to work, we were working a completely new 4-man mechanic. And I can tell you, when we got out there, it was completely seamless. I don't think that any of us had any bad rotations or missed any rotations. And that's extremely unusual, especially in the very, beginnings of a tournament. First few games, usually we're stepping over ourselves or over officiating a little bit as far as the mechanics are concerned. But in this particular case, I didn't see any of that. And so kudos to you and your guys for doing that series, because I think that helped a lot.
Yeah, appreciate that. Marshall made it easy. Marshall did a lot of work with that one too, so I'll give him a shout out too, Marshall Casey, with all his work. Guys, I appreciate you, Mitch. I appreciate you being vulnerable and letting us kind of dive down that foxhole. I mean, as somebody who was really young in college baseball and was oftentimes kind of like ostracized a little bit from groups and whatnot, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I've gravitated and stayed with Little League Baseball for so long. I did want to flush out kind of the younger guy experience here for people because, again, we've got to have open doors to those younger folks. And not only do we have to have those younger doors, at the same time, that's a two-way street. And I thought it was a really good representation of both you guys to share all those thoughts on bringing a newer guy in. And then secondly, what characteristics really make for a new umpire looking to advance to regional World Series, even though you may have been umpiring for 10 years or so. Regional and World Series stuff's a little bit different. And I think those characteristics are definitely something that a lot of us, especially whether we are young or not, can take away from. So thanks for letting us go down that foxhole and sharing some really good stuff. You guys started to mention a lot of keys to success. I think just to kind of recap from what I picked out, you guys worked crews of 4 in pool play, and you got to stay with those crews in pool play. And then once you guys got into bracket play, then you went ahead and went into the 6-man and mixed some things up there. So it sounds like that was a pretty cool opportunity, and that was definitely one that we saw come about for the most part with the Little League Baseball World Series as well. The majority of them stayed with their crews too, and I think those lot crews definitely, as you guys have mentioned, have had a key contributor not only to camaraderie, but to allow you to have some success too. So my next kind of theme here, I guess, would be some of the keys to success. You guys have mentioned some of these here too, so I'll kind of just open it up to conversations here. What are some of the keys that you guys found to success? Whether we've kind of talked about them before and you want to dive into it a little bit more, or if you want to expose us to something else here that you felt made a significant impact on your crew's ability to succeed on and off the diamond.
Well, just to dovetail on what I was alluding to with the 4-man mechanic and what you guys were able to put on, we all work together as a collective unit. I experienced that in other regionals and World Series, but not to the degree where everybody kind of left their egos at the door. There was nobody that came in, and I mean, since we had all experienced that and all had probably been crew chiefs in one degree or another in our umpire experience, nobody, took more charge than when, like the plate guy ran the meetings as far as the pregame was concerned. And we chimed in and helped everybody when we were preparing for the game. But, and to my point earlier, everybody arrived already having that 4-man mechanic down pretty well. So it was seamless in the transition, both in the pregame meetings and on the field.
Kind of been said, Stu, but once we got there and we were there for a couple of days, we all enjoyed and wanted to be around each other. We wanted to be at the ballpark. You didn't have, for the most part, as a general rule, you didn't have guys leaving the ballpark. Once they got there, they were there for the day. They were watching the other crews. We were supportive of each other. There really was no egos. We obviously, when you go into that and you're meeting people for the first time, you don't know what to expect. But I thought the 12 of us, and then a lot of that goes out to Marshall and his leadership and how he was loose with us, how he had certain things he needed done a certain way but he was real professional and he was one of us, which I think really made it very relaxing and able to just go out and do our job. So, as Dave said, at any level, I'd never, even local district levels, I had never been part of a group of umpires that just worked so well together and just went out and did our jobs. And when we were off the field, it's like we'd known each other for years after those first couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of challenges that I'll mention. One was the weather, especially a pansy like me from the West who's used to, the Mediterranean climate of the San Francisco Bay Area coming, and that heat and humidity, kind of kicked our butts. And there were some games that we had heat advisories. And then we turned around and we had lightning delays. And we had one day where 2 games got washed out. I mean, one of those was by COVID because the team got sent home. And then the last game of the day didn't figure into the standings. So it was the last day of pool play and it was getting late. I mean, it took 5 hours each for the first 2 games to get in. And that was just, all of that. But the people were great. They rolled with the punches. They opened up the gym for the girls to be in out of the weather and kicked us out because we were trying to eat our lunch. So we dove into our favorite place on earth, which was our locker room. I mean, I think had it not been for COVID, we would have had more options for watching the game because we weren't allowed to sit in the stands. That was for the families and that was tightly controlled. We had places that we could be. We could go out into right field. And in the cool of the evening, we would do that and watch the games in person. But when it was hot, we sat in the air-conditioned locker room with our refrigerator full of Gatorade and we watched on TV.
It's good. And that bonding time and just watching it on TV gives you a whole new perspective as well in terms of being a key to success. Keep flushing out that keys to success. Anything else to go ahead and add into some of the things that you guys may have found most useful to help you succeed either individually or even as a crew here as we continue to think back on your experience at the World Series?
Dave mentioned earlier checking your ego at the door, and along the similar line is being open to constructive criticism. And a lot of the times, we'd come in for a post game and we'd each, go spend a round beating up ourselves for whatever we got wrong. And the other 3 didn't even see it. But then, there were other times where, you always have your partners back on the field. And then if something goes a little bit wrong, you roll with the punches on the field and then make some, corrective suggestions afterwards. And everybody was open to that.
Yeah, I'll add on to that, Mike. I wholeheartedly agree. Teamwork is the word that comes to my mind. Working together, just to make sure you get everything right, call the best game you can, and everybody works together. You don't want to say check the ego at the door, but because we didn't do that because that's who we were, but we knew that going in. So just the whole teamwork thing and working together to do the best that we could. That's the advice I would give for folks looking to do this: is do the best job you can to provide the best experience for those that are playing the game.
Another important team member was our umpire rescue person who was there with the water and the Gatorade and the wet towels and getting the plate umpire out of the sun in between innings. And they're having our red hat be a fellow Little League umpire that was there working with us and watching out for us as well. But I think that made a big difference. And that's something I'm not used to. We don't usually do that in the West because we don't have to, but it was vital. And just having that 5th umpire or that 7th umpire there, making sure that you were hydrated, looking you in the eye and asking you if you're okay, and then getting you back out on the field. That was big.
Awesome. Well, those are all great keys. Yeah, go ahead.
Just coming prepared before you get out there, being prepared. I think that was immensely important. And I think that's true with any tournament at any level that you do. Before you show up, do your homework and understand what kind of mechanics are going to be worked out, for that game. And, preferably call your partners in advance. In this case, we had several Zoom meetings ahead of time and got to talk about some of that stuff beforehand. And obviously you guys helped us a lot too, but I think that was integral in our success, was coming out there prepared before we even got there.
Yeah, it was a huge, I think, product of the pandemic too, David. To your point, I know our baseball umpires mentioned that, and you guys too, that you had significant preparation, probably far more than any other tournament prior to this point. And thanks to the power of Zoom that have allowed us to do that. And I think that's definitely a trend that baseball and softball and umpiring in general has been missing. And hopefully a product of the pandemic that we continue to get to see play out, not only for just World Series tournaments moving forward, but even for regionals and state tournaments. It doesn't have to be much, just a couple meetings here and there. But as you said, preparing before you arrive, I think was a big key for you guys, and then again for the other World Series umpires as well. So that's a good point.
Yeah, and just one more quick follow-up on that is, we found out so late in the game that we had this assignment. We didn't get the golden ticket in the mail, with that Williamsport postmark that you look for. We found out, just like a month and a half before we were going to do it, as a phone call from Tom Rawlings asking if we'd been vaccinated. And it's like, and then, well, how long do I have to decide? No, you need to decide, and we need to know. I mean, for me, it was not as much of a change because I was preparing to do Western Region baseball, and then deferred that, and then got the call about the World Series like a week later. And so I went from preparing for baseball to preparing for softball. And I just wanted to shout out to some of my Bay Area people like Gerard Takaguchi and Don Waddell and Jim Rose, who got me going on some softball and put me on games. And I got to do the Northern California Girls Junior Softball Championship with an all district UIC crew, including Gerard on that. And they just, built me up and gave me all tons of feedback and got me ready to go. And then the other challenge I'll mention is that being from California, I had the furthest to go instead of the shortest to go. Like when I went to Portland, it was an hour and 45-minute flight. It took me 3 flights and about 12 hours to get to Greenville, North Carolina. So I'm glad I went a day early because I was smoked by the end of that day.
Yeah, it's a good point, something to consider for someone that has to go coast to coast on any World Series, because there are, obviously opportunities on both coasts here. Mark, you started to mention about how you were, you were scheduled and slated for the baseball regional out in the West, and obviously you ended up in the softball World Series. So that kind of is a great transition point to really our next main point and kind of the final main point for this evening, and that is to really kind of think and consider and promote the softball side of things, because there's a lot of folks out there that softball exists in Little League and the organization itself. Not sure maybe how exactly to get involved in it, particularly because softball isn't as abundant in many areas around the country or around the program as well. But just kind of give you guys an opportunity to promote the softball side of things to some people that may not know much about the softball side of things or maybe considering it as well. So just kind of want to give you guys an open door and feed some ideas for people to consider to think about what softball has to offer and the unique opportunities that exist there.
Well, I'll start. My experience has been over 20 years of working both baseball and softball. And I started umpiring as a Little League umpire over 25 years ago. But one of the things that I have had a unique opportunity to do is work both high school and college level softball and baseball. And so my perspective is that, obviously small field, being comparable as far as your mechanics are concerned and your movement, where you need to be. Softball usually likes to work no more than a 3-man generally, especially at the higher levels, but it's mostly 2-man. And, I would tell the guys that are just starting out and the girls that are just starting out and who want to do Little League, consider softball, because it's not that much different. I've had a lot of guys tell me, I don't I don't know about that yellow ball, and I'm not really that into, I don't understand that. And the strike zone's the same. As a matter of fact, with that yellow ball, there's more of an opportunity for it to hit the strike zone. It may be coming in a little bit of a different angle, when you've got some of those drops and some of those other pitches, screwball and things like that, but you pick it up really quickly. And what I find is there seems to be a little bit of a difference as far as, I don't kind of how the parents and also the girls, for the most part, there's not as much ego out there. Don't get me wrong, especially at the college level, they play serious ball for sure, but it just seems like there's not as much consternation. There's not as much, I don't have to have discussions with some of the coaches coming out of the dugout quite as frequently as I did, or as I do with baseball. So to me, that's really the big difference, is just some of that. But as far as the small field mechanics, it's not that much different, and it's a faster game. I did a high school game, 7-inning high school game in 50 minutes. I had really good pitching, obviously, in both teams, but don't take that for granted, because it's a powerhouse and it's a fast game. So it's very enjoyable. So that's my perspective.
Yeah.
Dave hit a lot of thoughts that I'd had, but the other thing I think it allows you on the, with the small field, I mean, I think that's a great benefit for umpires that are looking to really strive to get to that Major League Baseball regional or Major League Baseball World Series. You can go do softball at any level and you're still on that small diamond. But I think the one thing it does is it gives you more frequent exposure to certain situations in softball that you don't necessarily get inning in or game in, game out in baseball. And that's more of the small ball atmosphere, where you have, a lot more opportunities for hit by pitch, because the girls are up on the plate. They're willing to take the pitch and being hit. You kind of have to focus, where are they at when they get hit? Are they in the batter's box? Are they leaning over the plate? Because these girls are, they're playing more than just little league, so they're taught those things. And then in conjunction with that, especially with the slap hitters, are they in the batter's box when they make contact with the ball? Are they out of the batter's box? And it just gives you a different perspective, from a slap hit, a bunt. Baseball for large part seems to win away from the bunt, where in softball they're still doing it. And then in combination of those, you have the running lane violation that you really have to watch for. You may get that once or twice during a baseball game, but in a softball game, you're getting that a half a dozen times, a lot of times. So I think it just gives you a different part of the game that you can really focus on, that you have to be focused on. That's just going to prepare you when you're going back and forth between baseball and softball. But as Dave said, ball's a ball, strike's a strike, out's out, safe, fair, and foul's foul. So, we used to be just a baseball district and a softball district. And we changed that about 10 years ago. And about 6 years ago, I was encouraged through our region to start working some softball games. And, it's done a lot for my personal development for a lot of the reasons that have already been said here. But it's, and I really think as leadership embraces it and even works some of the different levels and goes from baseball to softball, it's only going to help grow the volunteers to work both sides of it. And we are Little League. We're not Little League Baseball. We're not Little League Softball necessarily. We're Little League. And, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I probably wouldn't have said this, but as an umpire, we should be willing to adapt and work whichever we need to work in order to better our program.
Yeah, I'm going to tag right on to what Don just said. I only work Little League games. That's my personal choice. And locally, district-wise, state-wise, whatever, we're Little League umpires. I work both. I've always worked both. I just wanted to add on to what Don said, that last piece he just mentioned, that, yeah, we need we should all look at doing that. There are very few differences between softball and baseball at the Little League, working Little League games. I mean, there are rules differences, and that's about it. So, yeah, I would encourage folks to consider working softball as well as baseball, just both together.
Once the game starts, you're just watching amazing athletes try to hit the ball and run it out and make plays. And the gender disappears in a lot of ways, but it's outside the lines, the cheering, the camaraderie, the spirit that girls bring to this game is amazing. And it reinvigorates yourself at the same time as it deafens you in some ballparks, because it's just so loud. And I don't know, maybe it's just my hearing aids, they're tuned to pick up that stupid cheering, but it goes on and on and on. I follow up and say that I'm an advocate for girls athletics. I'm the father of a daughter and a stepdad of a daughter who are both in athletics as kids up through high school. My stepdaughter even ran track in college. And the impact that sports can have on the girls and young women is amazing, because here is another place for them to belong and excel. And softball players aren't, necessarily the cute girl that gets all the latest outfits at Macy's, but she's out there banging the ball and running it out and being tough and still being a girl and all of that kind of stuff. And just to see that self-esteem and that sense of belonging that comes through girls' sports is so important. So to be a part of that, to advocate for that, that makes me, proud to be my daughter's father, and to, be out there and to try to kind of take that gospel, as you will, of girls' sport and if what Little League brings to it. It's just really important.
I would add one thing that's neat about the higher levels of play. I've been fortunate enough over the years to do softball regionals at both the senior and big league level. I've done a big league baseball regional and a senior World Series. When you get into that higher levels of play, the pace is just so much quicker on the softball side. You're probably never going to see a double play in a softball game at that level, just because everything goes so quickly. There's no time to turn it. So if you're looking to be able to jump from one play to the next real quick, and that's definitely a benefit that you get on the softball side, but not the baseball side.
Mitch, if you're still out there, I'll come.
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and just there was one thing I wanted to piggyback on that, just with the speed of the game. It's especially at these higher levels like that, and that's another thing that really, like Mike said, you don't see it on the baseball side as much. So a lot of guys that do want to come to the softball side, a lot of them might get overtaken by that speed, and it just, like these guys said, it's the same size field, mostly same mechanics. And the biggest thing with that still is just keeping slow, timing, as I'm sure a lot of us have probably preached to umpires in our leagues, districts, and places like that. It's the nice thing with softball, it really helps you emphasize the basics for umpiring. And it really helps that, especially at these higher levels when it does go fast, to not get overwhelmed.
I think those are all great points to bring about the softball game, and just how you still have to rely on training, and just because of its speed and it's a different context, it's going to sharpen other tools that are going to make you successful both on the softball diamond and on the baseball diamond as well. So I think those are great perspectives, and Don, that was a great lead and a good round off by everyone else there about that and the different opportunities there that exist in softball for us. Well, we're nearing the end here of things here, so I'm going to go ahead and get ready to wrap up. Guys, I think you have done an absolutely phenomenal job of talking to us about your experience, give us an idea of what it's like to be in Greenville and to do the World Series there. Some of the things that you appreciated about your crew to set you up for success, very, very much similar to a lot of the things that we've talked about already with our World Series baseball crew. And that goes to your point about softball, that it's not much different, and that there are opportunities out there for everyone to continue to grow the craft and whatnot there too. So just some really good insights, some really good thoughts. I thought you guys listed a ton of different characteristics that can be taken away of for many different situations, and really appreciate the time and the thought that you guys put into this and your answers and your willingness to share. So thanks for being here. I really appreciate then all the nuggets that you were able to go ahead and provide us here as well. So thank you for being on. I've got a couple last minute reminders before we go ahead and head out. We've got 2 more episodes here in this season to round out October. That's next week, the 17th. We'll talk about preparing your own individual improvement plan based upon a lot of the things that these individuals talk to us about here. And as we've kind of flushed out over the last few weeks, some of the characteristics of umpires that performed at a really, really high level for us in Little League Baseball and softball here in 2021. So we'll talk about creating our own individual improvement plans next week, the 17th. That's at 8 p.m. Eastern, so same time, same place. And in the following week, the 24th, we'll be back on to start to talk maybe not necessarily about our individual improvement plans, but then taking a look at what we're doing structuring-wise, local and district UIC-wise, so that we can springboard and prepare to lead other people as we turn to 2022 and get into November and December. So that's where we're going here. Just want to give everybody a snapshot there. Again, a huge word of appreciation to the 2021 World Series softball umpires. Thank you for being on. Thanks for taking the time to join us. And for everyone else, thank you for taking time to participate and to listen in. Other than that, we'll see you next week. We'll hang around for the post game. If you guys want to kick it around for a little bit, we'll do that. I appreciate you all here once again, and look forward to next week and another episode on creating our own individual improvement plans and applying the lessons that we've learned from 2021. Thanks for being here. See everybody next week.